His glove touched the hull, and the hull answered. Not with sound, the ice was too thick for that. 300 meters of ancient, silent cold. The vibration came through his suit, through the heating filaments that were already failing at the left shoulder, through the bone of his palm. It was not machinery. Kurasal Ven had spent 147 years listening to machines die in dead sectors. He knew the rattle of a failing reactor, the grind of a bearing that had spun too long. This was none of those. This was a rhythm. Slow, steady, a rise and fall so deep it felt like the ice itself was breathing. He pulled his hand back. The cold of the cave, 187 degrees below zero, bit through the glove in the half-second his palm was exposed. His breath fogged the inside of his helmet. He did not move. Ahead, lit by the beam of his shoulder lamp, the hull stretched away into darkness. Black, non-reflective, shaped like a blade that had been folded 900 years ago and never unfolded. The geometry was wrong for any known species in the Concord except one. The lines were too sharp, the angles too aggressive. This was a warship. Beneath the ice of a system the Galactic Council had labeled depleted * 2,000 years ago, a human warship was breathing. No registry codes, no Concord markings, no heat signature where there should have been nothing but cold. He thought of the mug on his console. Ceramic, chipped at the rim, the glaze faded to a color his mind still called sea foam. He had found it on his first dig, 89 years ago, in the rubble of a trading post that had been dead for 6 centuries. The mug had been waiting for someone to come back. He had never thrown it away. The ship had been waiting longer. He touched the hull again. The vibration did not change. It did not acknowledge him. It simply continued as it had been continuing, he would later learn, for 900 years. A single row of lights ran along the spine of the vessel, faint as old starlight, barely visible through the ice. Not emergency power, not a trick of the cold, maintained. Kurasal Ven stood in the dark and felt the ship breathe against his palm. And for the first time in a very long career, he did not know what to catalog. The part that still keeps me up at night. That comes later, stay with me. 14 days earlier, he had been drinking coffee. His survey vessel, the Cavani 7, smelled of the same 2 things it had smelled of for 23 missions, old coffee and ozone. The ozone came from the air recyclers, which were older than most of the species sitting in the council chamber. The coffee came from a canister he had bought at a way station 11 years ago. Both were constants. Both were home. The ceramic mug sat on the console beside his left hand. The chip in the rim was worn smooth where his lip had rested for 89 years. The seafoam color had faded to white clay in a crescent the exact shape of his mouth. He was mapping Sector Valdrin 9, a 12-light-year stretch of dead systems the Council's archaeological oversight had marked * no further investigation required. In Cavani terms, that meant abandoned. In Council terms, it meant someone had already filed the paperwork. His passive scanners were running their routine sweep, metallics, gravimetrics, thermal differentials. For 22 surveys, they had found nothing worth a second look. Dust, ice, the occasional asteroid that had once been part of something larger before time and cold pulled it apart. On the 14th day of the 23rd survey, they found a ship. The reading came through at 03:47 ship time, metallic density, artificial geometry, length, almost 5 kilometers. The computer flagged it as a sensor ghost and reran the sweep. It came back identical. Kurasal set down his coffee. The mug rattled against the console. He did not touch it again for 11 hours. The descent took 3 days. The Cavani 7 was not built for atmospheric entry. It was a survey platform, a grid of sensors strapped to an engine that had been old when Kurasal was young. He had to take the surface shuttle, a coffin-sized pod with heating filaments that had been patched 3 times and a view screen that flickered when the temperature dropped. The planet had no name, A string of numbers in the Council registry, V9 Gamma 4472. A ball of ice and iron orbiting a star that had burned out before the Concord was founded. Nothing lived here. Nothing had ever lived here. He landed 600 meters from the anomaly. The cold hit him the moment the shuttle door opened. 187 below. The suit's heating filaments, already struggling after 72 hours of continuous use, sputtered at the left shoulder and sent a thread of cold down his arm. He ignored it. The ice field stretched to a horizon that was gray and flat and empty. Nothing moved. The only sound was his own breathing and the crunch of his boots on the frozen surface. The ship was beneath him. He found the forward section first, a curve of hull breaking through the ice like a fin. He cleared the frozen crust with his field kit, chipping away layer after layer until the black metal was exposed to the starlight for the first time in 9 centuries. The surface was unmarked, no scoring, no impacts, no sign that it had ever seen combat. He spent 6 hours mapping the visible hull with his hand scanner before he found the name. It was not etched into the hull itself, but into a sheet of ice that had formed over the forward viewport. 3 meters thick, clear as glass, preserving the lettering like a fossil. The ice had grown in layers, each one capturing a moment, a fluctuation in temperature, a shift in the planet's orbit, a season that had passed before the star died. At the deepest layer, the one pressed against the hull, someone had written, "The Dormant Fleet, Vessel 14. Not a ship's name, a program's name. Kurasal sat in the dark with the beam of his lamp fixed on those words, and did not move for a long time. The cold seeped through the tear in his suit's left shoulder. His left hand, the one that always trembled when he found something that should not exist, began to shake. He did not try to stop it. He transmitted his preliminary findings to archaeological oversight on the 8th day. The report was 112 pages. He included gravimetric readings, metallurgical scans, ice core samples dating the hull's burial to within a decade of 900 years. He included 14 images of the name etched in ice. He did not include his opinion. Cavani did not offer opinions in official reports. They offered measurements. The response took 8 days. Ambassador Druath Vrethkai, 312 years old, 3 ritual scars across the throat, voice like gravel dragged across polished stone, filed motion 447b. The motion reclassified the anomaly as a natural metallic asteroid formation displaying coincidental geometric properties. It was seconded by 387 delegates. 12 voted against. The Cavani delegation was not among them. The official notification arrived on Kurasal's console at 11:22 ship time. He read it twice. Then he poured the rest of his coffee into the ceramic mug and drank it cold. The motion meant the site would be sealed. The investigation would be closed. The ship would remain under the ice, reclassified out of existence by a vote. He was still holding the mug when the second message came. It did not come through the council relay. It came through a channel that predated the Concord, an old frequency, one that had been dead for 40,000 years, reactivated for a single transmission. The voice on the other end was calm, old in a way that made Kurasal feel young for the first time in decades. Kurasal Ven, I am Vel Sharath. I have been watching this sector since before your species learned to write. Tell me what the ship did when you touched it. Kurasal looked at his left hand. The trembling had stopped. He had not touched the ship, not yet. But the Vali, a 40,000-year-old observer who had been silent for longer than the council had existed, was asking him a question that assumed he had. He set the mug down. The chip in the rim caught the console light. "What do you mean?" he said to the empty cabin when I touched it. The channel went silent, not closed, waiting. The channel stayed silent for 3 hours. Kurasal did not sleep. He stood at the console, the empty coffee mug cold beside his hand, and reran the sensor logs from the ice field. The data did not change. The vibration he had felt through his glove was not in the readings. The sensors recorded only mass, composition, depth, no energy signature, no mechanical rhythm, nothing that explained what his palm had felt. Either the ship was dead and his body had imagined it, or the ship was alive and his instruments were blind to it. He did not know which possibility unsettled him more. At 06:14 ship time, the proximity alarm chimed. An incoming vessel, transponder off, trajectory straight for his position. He reached for the comm and stopped. The silhouette on the scope was small, fast, human. It matched no council design. The shuttle landed 200 meters from his own, throwing up a cloud of ice crystals that hung in the vacuum-thin atmosphere like frozen breath. A single figure stepped out, not in EVA gear but in a plain uniform coat the color of slate. Her hair was gray at the edges, cropped short. Her face did not move when she looked at the ice field. She walked toward his ship as if the cold meant nothing. He opened the outer hatch. The cold poured in. She stepped through, brushed ice from her shoulders, and looked at him with eyes that had seen things she did not intend to explain. Commander Yale Voss, Earth Naval Archive, you filed a report. Kurasal nodded. You didn't touch the ship. It was not a question. The ice was thick over the forward viewport. I cleared it. I touched the ice. But not the hull. He shook his head. The question from Vel Sharath was still burning in his chest. Tell me what the ship did when you touched it. The volley had assumed he had touched it, but he hadn't. Not yet. Voss did not sit. She stood in the cramped cabin with her arms at her sides and her gaze fixed on the sensor logs still scrolling on Kurasal's console. I need to see it, she said. The second descent was faster because the path was already cut. Kurasal led Voss through the ice tunnel he had bored 3 days earlier, past the markers he had placed to map the hull's contour. The cold was worse than before, or his suit's shoulder had gotten worse. He couldn't tell which. The heating filament gave up entirely, and his left arm went numb from the elbow down. He did not mention it. The forward viewport loomed ahead, the letters still frozen in their ancient ice frame, the dormant Fleet Vessel 14. Voss stopped and looked at it for a long time. 4 minutes by Kurasal's suit chronometer. She said nothing. Her face, visible through her helmet, did not change, but her hands, gloved and still, did not move from her sides. Then she said very quietly, "You found the 14th one." Kurasal turned to look at her. The 14th. There were 47. We built 47 of them, but the records show only 33 decommissioning certificates. The paperwork was signed by the same officer, same week, and the file was marked closed, no further review required. That file had not been accessed in 400 years, until 3 days ago when your report hit the council relay and someone in my office pulled it up. Voss's voice was flat, the tone of someone reading a list of facts that added up to something impossible. 14 ships were never decommissioned. They just stopped appearing in the paperwork. And now you found one of them, 900 years later, under the ice of a system the council says was never developed. Kurasal's left hand began to tremble again. He pressed it against his thigh to still it. Who signed the certificates? An officer whose name doesn't appear in any Concord database. Not in any human database either except for those signatures. She signed 33 times, same pen, same week. Then she vanished. Voss turned her head and looked at the black hull stretching away into the ice. I need to know if it's still alive, and you need to touch it. Kurasal looked at his gloved palm. The volley had asked the same thing. Something was moving beneath the surface of this investigation. Something older than the council, older than the Concord, and he was standing in the middle of it with a trembling hand and a mug that had been waiting for 89 years. He walked to the hull. The ice near the viewport was thinner than he remembered, or maybe the ship had shifted. He reached out and placed his palm flat against the black metal, where no ice separated skin from hull. The vibration was still there. the same slow rhythm, a pulse that had been beating for 9 centuries, steady and deep. And then the lights came on. Not emergency lights, not flickering. A single row of illumination along the spine of the ship, faint as starlight, stuttering once and then steadying. Under the ice, the hull seemed to exhale. A hatch irised open along the forward section, 300 meters down, a dark mouth in the metal that had been sealed for 900 years. Voss's voice came through the calm, sharp and quiet. That's not supposed to happen. Kurasal did not move his hand. The vibration did not change. But somewhere deep in the ship, a machine that had been silent since before his species learned to write began to hum. They did not enter. Not then. Voss stood at the edge of the ice field and watched the open hatch with the stillness of a soldier who knew that some doors, once entered, could not be closed again. Kurasal pulled his hand back and flexed his fingers. The trembling was worse. He thought of the ceramic mug on his console, chipped and faded and still holding the shape of his lip. The ship, too, had been holding a shape that 9 centuries had not erased, a shape waiting for someone to come. 14 ships, he said. If one is here under the ice, then where are the others? Voss did not answer. She was staring at the open hatch. Her face finally had moved, a slight tightening around the eyes, the smallest compression of her lips. She was afraid, not of the ship, of what it meant. The logs, she said. If the lights are on, there are logs, maintenance records, power cycles. We need to know the last time this ship talked to anyone. She turned and began walking back to the surface, her boots crunching on the ice. Kurasal followed. The cold in his shoulder was a dull ache now, spreading down into his ribs. He did not hurry. Behind him, the hatch remained open, a black rectangle in the dark, and the single row of lights along the spine continued to glow. Back aboard the Kavani 7, Voss opened a secure channel to Earth. She did not use the Council relay. She used something older, a tight beam frequency that cut through the interference like a scalpel. Kurasal sat at his console and listened as she spoke to someone he could not hear. When she turned back, her expression was closed. I've requested additional personnel, a tactical historian and an engineer. They'll be here within a day. Tactical historian. Someone who tracks discrepancies, ships that were built but never decommissioned, regiments that were listed as active but never saw combat. The gap between what the paperwork says and what the galaxy actually contains. She paused. She's been tracking this one for years. She'll want to see the hull. Kurasal nodded. He poured the last of his coffee into the ceramic mug. The liquid was cold. He drank it anyway. Commander, he said, the Vali contacted me, an observer named Vel Sherath. She asked me what the ship did when I touched it. She asked before I had touched it. Voss's eyes sharpened. The Vali have been silent for 40,000 years. They don't talk to anyone. They barely acknowledge the conquered exists. She talked to me. Then this is bigger than 14 missing ships. The cabin fell quiet. Outside, the ice stretched away into the dark, and beneath it the warship breathed its slow, patient rhythm, waiting. Lieutenant Myra Osei arrived hours later on a military shuttle that burned fuel like a statement. She was young, late 20s, with dog tags at her chest that were older than she was, her grandfather's. She would later tell Kurasal from the Quiet Wars, a conflict he had never heard of. She carried a data slate and a look on her face that said she had not slept well in a long time. She set the slate on Kurasal's console without asking permission. 47 ships, she said, built in one yard over a single generation. The dormant fleet. Every record of their construction was erased from the main database 4 centuries ago. But the accounting subledgers don't erase, they just stop being accessed. I cross-referenced mineral requisitions, crew transfer orders, life support provisioning manifests. Each ship had a full crew complement. Each ship logged shakedown cruises, resupply stops, maintenance cycles. Then on the same day for all 47 the records stop. Not purged, just no further entries. Osei looked at Curacao, then at Vas. 33 of them got decommissioning certificates signed by a Commander Ilara Vane, all in 1 week. Same handwriting, same pen pressure, same official seal. But here's the thing, Commander Vane was listed as a navigation officer on the Shepherd's Rest, one of the 14 ships that did not receive a certificate. According to her own service file, she was on board that ship when it was supposedly decommissioned. Which means she couldn't have signed anything. Curaçao's left hand was trembling on his knee. He did not try to stop it. So someone used her name. Someone who knew the system well enough to forge certificates, but not well enough to realize she was on the ship they said she was decommissioning. Osei nodded. Or they didn't care. The point is, 14 ships were never decommissioned. They were placed, hidden, parked in systems so dead the council wouldn't bother to scan them, and they were placed with a single instruction. She turned the data slate toward him. On it was a document, old and scanned from paper, the ink faded but legible. At the top, in formal script, the dormant charter. Below it, a single line of text, signed by 12 officers whose names appeared in no Concord database. Mission wait. Voss, who had been silent, spoke from the corner of the cabin. Wait for what? Osei did not answer. She looked at Curaçao, and for the first time since she had walked aboard, the certainty in her face cracked. We don't know, the charter doesn't say, it just says wait. And the lights are still on. And the logs, we pulled the maintenance log this morning, through a channel we shouldn't have been able to access. The last entry is 3 days old. Curaçao set the mug down. The chip caught the light. 3 days, he repeated. The ship has been under ice for 900 years. Its lights are on. Its maintenance log is current, and it's been waiting. For what? No one answered. Outside, the ice field lay still. Beneath it, the warship's hull hummed with a vibration that was not machinery, a slow, steady rhythm like breathing. And somewhere, in the darkness of 14 dead systems, 13 other ships were doing the same thing. Curaçao watched from the bridge of the Shepherd's Rest, the blue light pulsing steady around him. The ship was fully awake now. Consoles that had been dark for 9 centuries flickered with status reports. The engines, cold for 900 years, were cycling through pre-ignition. Harlow's voice came through the comm, strained with something that was almost laughter. She's ready. I don't know how the fuel cells should have decayed, the coolant should have crystallized, but she's ready. She's been maintaining herself this whole time. The ships were built to wait, Osei said quietly. They weren't just parked, they were preserved. On the main screen, the council formation split into 3 wings. 2 curved outward to flank the ice field. The center, with the dreadnought, advanced directly toward the Shepherd's Rest. A channel opened. Drueth's voice filled the bridge, gravel, and ritual formality. Unidentified vessel beneath the ice of V9 Gamma 4472. You are in possession of unregistered military technology in violation of Concord Article 7. By order of the Security Committee, you will power down all systems and surrender to containment personnel. The site will be sterilized. Non-compliance will be met with lethal force. Curaçao looked at Vas. She was standing at the tactical station, her face unreadable. He's giving us a chance to surrender, she said. That means he doesn't know the ship is operational. He thinks we're just scavengers. He'll destroy it anyway, Osei said. The vote is already passed. He's not here to negotiate. Curaçao reached for the comm. His left hand was steady. This is Curaçao Ven Cavani Archaeological Survey. The vessel beneath the ice is the Shepherd's Rest, a human warship of the dormant fleet. It has been here for 900 years. Its logs are current, its crew is ready, and its charter, a document signed by 12 human officers, grants it the right to wait. I have read the charter. I have touched the hull, and I will testify to everything I have seen before the full council. Silence. Then Drueth's voice returned, colder now. The Cavani delegation does not recognize your authority to make such a statement. You are one archaeologist. Your testimony is irrelevant. Curacao looked at the mug on the console. Sea foam, chipped, worn to white clay. He had found it 89 years ago in the rubble of a place everyone said was dead. He had kept it because it was still there, still whole, still waiting. "Ambassador," he said, "the ship is awake. The other 13 are waking. You can sterilize this site, but you cannot silence what I have already transmitted to 47 conquered archives, 12 independent media relays, and the Vali observer Velsharath. The truth is already out. The only question is whether you will be the ambassador who tried to bury it, or the one who listened." The channel went quiet. On the tactical display, the flanking wings slowed. The dreadnought held its course, but its weapons stayed cold. Voss let out a breath. "He's thinking." "Let him think," Harlow said, his voice rough. "The rest has waited 900 years. She can wait a little longer." The vote in the Security Committee took 6 hours. Curacao spent them on the bridge of the Shepherd's Rest, reading the personal logs of Commander Ilara Vane. She had written them in the final days before the fleet was hidden. The entries were short, plain, the words of a woman who knew she would never see the outcome of what she was setting in motion. Day 1, the crews have been briefed. 47 ships, 14 to be hidden. We drew lots. I drew the Shepherd's Rest. I don't know if that's luck or something else. Day 7. The engineers say the hibernation systems will hold for a millennium, longer if the cold stays stable. We're burying them in ice because ice preserves. The irony isn't lost on me. Day 23. The last supply run. The crews are quiet. No one says goodbye. We all understand that we are planting seeds we will never see grow. Day 40. Tomorrow we seal the hatches. The charter is signed. 12 names on a piece of paper that will outlast all of us. I keep thinking about the people who will find these ships, who they'll be, what they'll think when they touch the hull and feel the engines still running. I hope they understand. This was never about the ships. It was about proving that we could build something that would outlast the silence. Curacao stopped reading. He looked at the mug, the worn crescent of white clay, something that had outlasted the silence. He understood. The Security Committee reconvened at 18:00 ship time. The vote was close, closer than anyone expected. Drueth's motion to sterilize the site failed by a margin of 3 votes. A new motion passed instead, an emergency hearing before the full council to be held in 10 days. Curacao then was called to testify. He received the notification on the bridge of the Shepherd's Rest, with Voss and Osai and Harlow standing around him. The mug was in his hand. He lifted it, looked at the chip in the rim, the way the seafoam glaze had worn through to white clay in the exact shape of his mouth. "It took 10 days, he said. 89 years of patience, and it took 10 days to change a vote." Voss shook her head. It wasn't 10 days, it was 900 years, and a single archaeologist who wouldn't let them forget. The testimony was held in the grand chamber of the Conquered, a hall so vast that the ceiling disappeared into shadow. Curacao stood at the center, alone, his faded expedition coat with its 14 mission patches the only color in a sea of gray robes and ceremonial scales. Ambassador Drueth sat in the front row, his 3 ritual scars pale against his throat, his face unreadable. Curacao did not speak from notes. He spoke from the memory of cold metal beneath his palm, the vibration of engines that had never stopped, the words of a woman who had signed her name and sealed a hatch, and trusted that someone, someday, would find what she had left behind. He told them about the ice, about the name etched 3 meters deep, about the lights still on, about the logs current 3 days after he filed his report, about the charter signed by 12 officers who did not exist in any Conquered database, granting the fleet permission to do one thing. He told them about Commander Ilara Vane, who had written 40 entries in a personal log, and then disappeared into the silence of her own creation. And then he said the words that he had been holding since the moment his glove touched the hull. The dormant fleet was never a weapon, it was a message. Humanity knew you would forget them. They knew you would file them under minimal and move on, so they built something that would outlast your forgetting. 14 ships buried in 14 dead systems waiting for someone to notice, not to fight, just to be found. To prove that patience is not absence, it is architecture, and they built it to last. He lifted the ceramic mug. The seafoam glaze caught the chamber light. The white clay crescent where his lip had rested for 89 years was visible to everyone. I found this mug in the rubble of a trading post that had been dead for 6 centuries. It was still whole, still waiting. I kept it because it reminded me that the universe is full of things that outlast the people who made them. The dormant fleet is one of those things, and if you destroy it, you will be destroying not a ship but a promise. A promise that patience is worth something, that waiting is not the same as giving up. He set the mug down on the testimony stand. The sound echoed in the vast chamber. "The waiting is over," he said. "The question is what you do now." 3 days later, the council voted. The vote was not close. The dormant fleet was reclassified as a protected archaeological site, granted full recognition under conquered law. The 14 ships were to remain in their resting places, maintained by joint human Kavani teams. The crews, the descendants of the original volunteers scattered across a dozen worlds, were notified. Some came, some didn't. The Shepherd's Rest stayed beneath the ice, its lights still on, its engines still humming, its charter still in effect. Commander Ilara Vane's name was entered into the official record, not as a forger of certificates, as the author of the dormant charter. Ambassador Druoth resigned 6 weeks later, citing health reasons. No one believed him. And Kurasal then returned to his survey vessel, the Kavani 7, and poured the last of his coffee into the ceramic mug. The seafoam glaze was almost gone now. The white clay showed through in long, smooth streaks where his mouth had rested. He lifted it to his lips and drank. It was cold, he didn't mind. He thought of the ship beneath the ice, still breathing, still waiting, not for a signal anymore, just waiting because that was what it had been built to do, waiting because some things did not need to end. He set the mug down. The chip caught the console light. And somewhere, in the darkness of 14 dead systems, 13 other ships were doing the same thing. The hum was not a sound. It was a pressure low and deep, felt in the chest more than the ears. Kurasal stood on the bridge of the Shepherd's Rest and watched the tactical display fill with council signatures. 43 ships, weapons hot, closing fast. The hum of the ancient warship did not waver. It rose, it steadied, and then it spoke. Not in words, in light. Every console on the bridge flared blue. The spine lights along the hull, the single row that had been faint as old starlight, brightened to a cold, hard white. The ice field above the ship cracked in a dozen places, fissures racing outward from the buried hull. And then, in a voice that was not a voice, a transmission that bypassed the comm systems entirely and spoke directly to every ship in the council fleet, the Shepherd's Rest announced itself. "This is the dormant fleet vessel 14, Coulson Shepherd's Rest. I am awake. I am armed. I am waiting. State your intentions." The words appeared on Kurasal's console in plain human script. He read them twice. The ship had not asked permission to speak. It had simply done what it was built to do. On the tactical display, the council flanking wings halted. The dreadnought at the center continued its burn, but slower now. Druoth's channel opened again, and his voice was different, still cold, but with an edge Kurasal had not heard before. Uncertainty. "Unidentified vessel. You are transmitting on restricted conquered frequencies. Identify your commanding officer." A pause, then the ship responded. "Commanding officer, Commander Ilara Vane. Status: preserved in hibernation. Authority: dormant charter. Article 1. I speak for her. Kurasal looked at Voss. Her face had gone very still. Ilara Vane is on board, she said. She never left. The charter said the crews would return. She's been here the whole time. Osai was already at the crew manifest console. The hibernation bay. It's at the center of the ship, behind the bridge. 12 berths. 11 are empty. 1 is occupied. Harlow took a step toward the door. She's been in hibernation for 900 years. That's not possible. The systems would have failed. The power would have. The ship never lost power, Osai said. It's been maintaining itself, and her. Kurasal stood up. His left hand was not trembling. He had not noticed when it stopped. Take me to her. The hibernation bay was a cylinder at the heart of the ship, ringed with berths that looked like glass coffins standing upright. 11 of them were empty, their lids open, their interiors dark. The 12th was sealed. Inside, suspended in a pale blue fluid that had not clouded in 9 centuries, was a woman. She was young, younger than Kurasal had expected. Her hair was dark and cropped short. Her face was calm, the face of someone sleeping peacefully. She wore a uniform coat the color of slate, the same coat Voss wore, the same design across 900 years. On her collar, a single insignia, a ship and a star and the word wait. The console beside the berth displayed a single line of text: hibernation stable, awaiting confirmation signal, signal received, awakening sequence in progress, estimated time to full consciousness, 2 hours. She's alive, Osei said. The ship kept her alive for 900 years. Harlow stepped forward and placed his palm flat against the glass. The old engineer's face, lined and worn, cracked open with something that was too deep for tears. Commander, he said quietly, I cleaned your engine filters. I was 19. I didn't know what we were doing. None of us did. Voss touched the console. Can we wake her? The ship's voice came through the bridge channel, calm and steady. Commander Vane's awakening is authorized. The signal has been received. The waiting is over. Kurasal looked at the woman in the glass coffin. She had signed her name on 33 decommissioning certificates. She had written the charter that hid 14 ships. She had sealed herself into this berth 9 centuries ago, trusting that someone, an archaeologist, a historian, an engineer, would find her. And she had waited. He thought of the mug on his console. 89 years. It was nothing, less than nothing. Wake her, he said. The fluid in the berth began to drain. The Council fleet had stopped its advance. The dreadnought held position at the edge of the ice field, its weapons still hot but its targeting system silent. Drueth's voice came through the comm again, and this time the uncertainty was unmistakable. Vessel Shepherd's Rest. We are detecting a biological signature on board, a single life sign. Explain. Kurasal opened the channel. Her name is Commander Ilara Vane. She is the author of the dormant charter. She has been in hibernation for 900 years. She is waking up now. And Ambassador, I think you should be the one to explain to the full council why you almost bombed a sleeping woman. The channel went silent. Voss let out a breath that was almost a laugh. He's not going to answer that. No, Kurasal said, but the council will ask him. The awakening took 2 hours. Kurasal spent them in the hibernation bay, standing beside the glass berth as the pale blue fluid drained, and the life support systems cycled warm air through Commander Vane's berth. The console tracked her vitals, heartbeat slow but steady, brain activity shifting from hibernation to consciousness. I worked the crew logs, pulling up the service records of the 12 officers who had signed the charter. 11 had gone into hibernation with their ships. 11 had died when their hibernation systems failed, centuries ago, their ships still waiting in the dark of dead systems. Ilara Vane was the last. 14 ships, Osai said. 14 commanders, and she's the only one who made it. Harlow shook his head. She didn't make it because she was lucky. She made it because the Shepherd's Rest was the flagship. The best systems, the best engineers. They put everything they had into this ship because they knew if any of them survived, it had to be her. Why her? Kurasal asked. Voss answered, her voice quiet. Because she wrote the charter. She was the one who believed in it hard enough to make 12 other officers sign their names. She was the one who convinced the crews to leave their families and seal themselves into hibernation berths and trust that someone someday would find them. She paused. She was the one who knew that patience was not giving up. It was architecture. Kurasal looked at the woman in the berth. Her eyelids were moving. The console beeped consciousness in 30 seconds. He thought of Commander Vane's personal log, the last entry. I hope they understand. This was never about the ships. It was about proving that we could build something that would outlast the silence. She was about to wake up and find out that they had. Commander Alara Vane opened her eyes. For a long moment she did not move. She lay in the berth, her eyes open and unfocused, staring at the ceiling of a ship that had been her home for 900 years. Then she blinked. Her lips moved. The sound that came out was barely a whisper, rough with disuse, but the words were clear. Did they find us? Kurasal stepped forward. Yes, I found you. My name is Kurasal Ven. I am an archaeologist. It has been 900 years since you went into hibernation. The fleet is intact. The charter is intact, and the waiting is over. Vane turned her head. Her eyes found his face. She looked at him for a long moment and then, very slowly, very quietly, she smiled. I knew someone would come, she said. I didn't know who, I didn't know when, but I knew someone would come. She sat up, her movements slow and careful, her muscles remembering how to work after 9 centuries of stillness. Harlow stepped forward to help her, but she raised a hand. I'm all right. I've been asleep a long time. I need to stand. She stood, her legs held. She looked around the hibernation bay at the 11 empty berths, and her face flickered with something, loss, Kurasal thought, or the beginning of it. The others. They didn't make it, Voss said quietly. The hibernation systems on the other ships failed. You're the only one who survived. Vane nodded slowly. I thought that might happen. We knew the systems weren't perfect. We knew most of us wouldn't make it. She looked at the empty berths. But they knew that too. They signed anyway. She turned to Kurasal. You said you're an archaeologist. That means you're not human. The Conquered found us first. The Conquered tried to bury you. Ambassador Druoth filed a motion to reclassify your ship as a natural asteroid formation. The Security Committee voted to sterilize the site. There is a fleet of 43 Council warships in orbit right now, and their orders are to destroy everything. Vane's expression did not change, but they haven't. No, because I testified. Because I told them about the charter and the logs and the lights that were still on. Because a Vali observer named Vel Shareth sent the signal that woke your fleet, and because the Shepherd's Rest spoke to them. Vane looked up at the ceiling, at the blue light pulsing steady and calm. She spoke. She announced herself. She told them her call sign and her commanding officer and her intentions. She told them she was waiting. Vane smiled again, a small, tired smile. She was always smarter than me. Commander Alara Vane walked onto the bridge of the Shepherd's Rest for the first time in 900 years. The consoles lit as she passed. The lights brightened. The ship's hum, the low, steady rhythm Kurasal had felt through his glove in the ice cave, rose to meet her. She walked to the forward station, the command chair that had been waiting for her since the day she sealed the hatch, and she sat down. Ship, she said, status report. The ship's voice filled the bridge, all systems operational, weapons hot, shields at full capacity. Hibernation berth 12, occupant awake. Welcome back, Commander. Thank you. Open a channel to the Council fleet. The channel opened. Druoth's face appeared on the main screen. his ceremonial scales dull in the blue light, his 3 ritual scars pale against his throat. His expression was unreadable, but his voice, when he spoke, was the voice of someone who knew he had lost. "This is Ambassador Druoth of the Vrethkai delegation. To whom am I speaking?" Vane leaned forward. "My name is Commander Ilara Vane of the Dormant Fleet, author of the Dormant Charter, commanding officer of the Shepherd's Rest. I have been in hibernation for 900 years. I have just been informed that the Conquered voted to destroy my ship. Is that correct?" Druoth's throat moved. "The Security Committee voted to neutralize an unregistered military asset. The vote has since been reconsidered." "Reconsidered?" Vane let the word hang in the air. "Ambassador, I signed the Dormant Charter 9 centuries ago. I hid 14 ships in 14 dead systems. I did it because I knew that one day the Conquered would try to classify humanity out of existence. I did it because I knew that patience, not weapons, not fleets, not votes, was the one thing you could not defeat." She paused. "And I was right." Druoth said nothing. "The waiting is over," Vane said. "The Dormant Fleet is awake, and you are going to open a channel to the full council and tell them what you found here. Not an asteroid, not a natural formation, a warship, a human warship with its lights on and its commander alive and its engines ready. And you are going to tell them that humanity has been waiting for 900 years, and they are done waiting." The channel closed. Kurasal looked at Vane. She was still sitting in the command chair, her hands resting on the armrests, her face calm. She looked, he thought, like someone who had been holding her breath for 9 centuries and had finally exhaled. "Commander," he said, "what happens now?" Vane looked at him. "Now we wait. But this time we don't wait alone." The council vote took 3 days. Kurasal spent them aboard the Kavani 7, drinking cold coffee and listening to the negotiations on the open channel. Voss and Os stayed on the Shepherd's Rest, helping Vane prepare her testimony. Harlow spent every waking hour in the engine room, marveling at systems that had maintained themselves for 9 centuries. The vote, when it came, was not close. The Dormant Fleet was reclassified as a protected historical site, granted full recognition under Conquered law. The 14 ships were to remain in their resting places, maintained by joint human Kavani teams. Commander Ilara Vane was granted full ambassadorial status, the first human to hold such a rank in Conquered history. Ambassador Druoth resigned 6 weeks later. No one was surprised. And Kurasal then returned to his survey vessel, poured the last of his coffee into the ceramic mug, and stood at the viewport looking down at the ice field where the Shepherd's Rest still lay, its spine lights still glowing, its engines still humming. He lifted the mug. The seafoam glaze was almost gone now. The white clay showed through in long, smooth streaks. The chip in the rim was worn soft as silk. 89 years, 900 years. The numbers blurred together in his mind, losing their shape. He thought of Commander Vane, waking up in a berth she had sealed with her own hands, trusting that someone would find her. He thought of the 11 empty berths, and the 11 commanders who had signed the charter knowing they would probably never wake up. He thought of the lights on the spine of the Shepherd's Rest, still burning after 9 centuries, still waiting. He thought of the ceramic mug, chipped and faded and still holding its shape. The ship beneath the ice breathed its slow, steady rhythm. The lights along its spine glowed faint and blue. And somewhere in the darkness of 13 other dead systems, 13 other ships were breathing too. Waiting, not for a signal anymore. Just waiting because that was what they had been built to do. Waiting because some things did not need to end. Kurasal set the mug down. The chip caught the console light. He did not file his report. Not yet. He sat in the quiet of his cabin, the smell of old coffee and ozone around him, and listened to the hum of a warship that had outlasted the silence.